Good afternoon, and welcome to Partnerships and Federal Funding, Case Studies in Reentry Programs. I'm Ariel Altman from the Civil Division of the National Legal Aid and Defender Association. Today's webinar is part of NLADA's Partnerships That Work series, and together with my Defender colleagues, we're pleased to present our webinar on how civil legal aid and public defender programs are building partnerships that are strengthening efforts to facilitate successful reentry for clients. Our experts presenting today will share their experiences and lessons learned with developing these partnerships and how they've helped position them to pursue and in many cases secure federal funding to support their reentry work. I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters, who include Barbara Galloway, Reentry Resource Specialist from Florida Circuit 19, Arlene Griffith and Danielle Oulette, both Reentry Program Coordinators from Florida Circuit 15, and finally, Laura Tuggle, Executive Director of Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. Before we begin, there are a few logistical items I want to share. First, we will have about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please be sure to submit your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and our speakers will respond to as many questions as they can at the end. If you're interested in accessing the presentation slides, we'll be posting them on the webinar page of the NLADA website by end of day tomorrow. And finally, we'll also be recording this webinar, so if you'd like to access the recording, please check in the NLADA website later this month. Thank you to our speakers and to all of you for participating today. And now I'm going to pass it over to Barbara.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Barbara Galloway. I am the Reentry Resource Specialist for the 19th Circuit of Florida. I work for the Public Defender's Office, and we are 4 counties. We are Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin, and Okeechobee counties. Go to the next slide. For us here in the 19th Circuit, because we're such a small area, but we're a fast-growing area, we rely on community organizations. So we partner with COSA, which is the Council of Social Aging. It's a roundtable of about 75 different nonprofit agencies that are in St. Lucie County with a wide range of services, and we network there. We meet once a month, and we also have a web page, and we have a tool through the internet to send emails if challenges come up throughout the day that we want to pull on the resources within the community. We also partner with Bridges Out of Poverty, which is a 16-week class that enables individuals to look at their situation and brainstorm and get some ideas on some tools to use to come up out of a low-income area. And then finally, the Journey Forward program. That is a drug rehabilitation prevention program within the St. Lucie County Jail. And they are funded by the managing entity, which is Southeast Behavioral Health Network. That's where their funding comes from. We also have within the St. Lucie County Jail, we have a spiritual dorm, we have a culinary dorm, and we have a GED dorm. You can go to the next slide. And then as a reentry specialist, I go to job fairs. I am interacting with CareerSource, which is the state-run agency for employment services. I network with different halfway houses within the area, so it is my job as the reentry specialist is to try to find an alternative for clients that are going through the court system. So if I can place them in a treatment center or place them at a halfway house where they can do community control, that best suits and it's low income, lower stress on our jail population. I also work with the probation officers, the DOC, Department of Correction probation officers within our circuit, and we partner up with trying to get the best information to that individual client's needs. There's also a pilot program that is here in the 19th Circuit that is DOC ReEntry employment specialist, which that is their sole job. They work with it for the Department of Correction, and they are trying to find these convicted felons job opportunities within the community. The local treatment centers that we have that we network in that are federally funded is CRC, is the Council of Recovery, the female treatment center that primarily focuses on pregnant IV drug users, which have the highest priority, and then it goes down from there depending on the bed's availability. They have a psychiatrist on board, and like I said, the women can have their children there, if they give birth while they're in treatment. It is a 6-month residential program. And then they have an outpatient program where they will send a van to each of the counties to pick up the girls, to bring them back to CRC for outpatient treatment. And then they also have a halfway house there. So they're very plugged into the recovery process. So from start to finish, it's about a year-long program. And then there are 3 other facilities that are in our area. 2 are for men, and 1 is for females. And they are faith-based programs, the Refuge Ranch, Faith Farm, and Dunklin. Next slide. So, like I said in the beginning, we rely solely on community support. We don't have any grants or federal funding that comes through. We rely on the different nonprofits with their resources. But with that being said, we have a resource packet for each of the counties that has a list of information, so it breaks everything down. We also utilize 211. It's like an information for the different resources. You can call 211 in our area, tell them what your issue is, what you're looking for, and they'll give you several different phone numbers and names of agencies within the community that deals with the specific issue that you're requesting information on. And then our thrift stores that are in the area, we've partnered with them to get clothing. So each of the there's 4 thrift stores. The clients can get 3 shirts, 3 pair of pants, and some food. So the first day they can get transportation, a bicycle, and clothing, and be placed into a halfway house coming out of jail or prison. And then finally it would be Life Builders. Now, Life Builders started about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, and our head public defender, Diamond Letty, along with some concerned citizens, found a gap in services. The client that's getting out, they might need shoes or work boots or, just some kind of minor thing. And that could be the choice of committing a crime or going legitimate. So they started the nonprofit, and there is a sliding fee that they'll pay for substance abuse counseling. They get them work boots. Now, they do apply for grants. The United Way and Allegheny and a couple of grant opportunities that are in Indian River. And then they have a golf tournament once a year for a fundraiser. And next slide. then the Public Defender's Office is dedicated to helping the client. So as a reentry specialist, I would say it's along the lines of a social worker or a case manager. It's tailored to the individual. We are networking within the community for resources for that individual. We partner with DCF, the probation officer, DCF, Department of Children and Families. That's where if a child was placed into foster care. And then we also partner with Treasure Coast Homeless Council, which is a rental agent to help with rent. They get federal dollars like through HUD or Section 8, and they can provide first, last, and security, or first and security, or something along those lines. And then we partner with Life Builders as well to try to get an individual into their own housing. And we also partner with landlords. We have a landlord association, and there's a few landlords that we work with that will actually rent to convicted felons. As long as they're employed, we get their first, last, and security in. We do the referral so they can have housing and employment and be productive members of society. The website there for the Public Defender's Office is www.pd19.org. There's different tabs within that website of the different services that the Public Defender's Office helps with for the community, and it gives you a little bit of a breakdown of client services that helps with mental health court, drug court, VA court, and the programs that are within the jail to help reduce recidivism. And if you have any questions, you can let me know at the end of this conference. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Willette. I'm one of the reentry program coordinators. I oversee the juvenile reentry, and I do want to thank Barbara for sharing your work that's being performed in Circuit 19. Palm Beach County is happy to participate in this webinar today, and Arlene Griffiths and I will share our reentry experiences and provide background in terms of how Palm Beach County Reentry Initiative was started, our journey, and our progress to date. If you want to go ahead, thank you. Sorry, go ahead and, okay. So this slide provides a general background based on the U.S. and Palm Beach County's data. It is important to know that the U.S. accounts for 5% of the world's population, yet we have 25% of the world's prisoners. In 2016, Palm Beach County had approximately 48,000 arrests, and approximately 1,200 inmates per year return to Palm Beach County from state prisons. Data has also shown that 2/3 of these individuals are rearrested within 3 years. Go ahead and, thank you. Okay. So Palm Beach County has identified key developments for collaboration. I will highlight 6 areas which will be discussed in this webinar. The first key development starts with establishing a reentry task force. Another key is the partnership with the Department of Corrections. Our third key included a reentry strategic plan, and an important key was the Second Chance Act funding. Moving on to collecting and tracking data, which we use as our Renew database. And lastly, the creation of policies and procedures. Go ahead. Okay. Palm Beach County Criminal Justice Commission established the Reentry Task Force in 2008. Circuit 15 Public Defender Carrie Howitt was very instrumental in starting and becoming the first chair for the task force. and remain the chair for 7 years until 2015. Okay, thank you. So here you see a chart of the ReEntry Task Force structure. Under the umbrella of the task force, subcommittees were established to address specific areas relating to the reentry population. These included housing, data and evaluation, employment, juvenile, sexual offender, and sustainability. As you see in this slide, these are Palm Beach County's key outcomes. We focus on improving public safety, reducing recidivism rates, decreasing number of victims of crime, and lastly, improving quality of life for Palm Beach County residents. From the inception, these were identified areas of focus. From the beginning, Palm Beach County created an inventory, which this inventory gaps and challenges were identified. We determined location, coordination, and systemic were the primary issues. Florida Department of Corrections became a key stakeholder, which resulted in execution of a memorandum of understanding. One of the first steps was to create a strategic plan establishing a 5-year goal. And today we continue to revisit our plan on a yearly basis, identifying new goals. This living document continues to guide Palm Beach County through the process with input from our key stakeholders. In 2009, Palm Beach County applied for the Second Chance Act grant and was unsuccessful. In 2010, based on the Department of Justice feedback, Palm Beach County applied for the same grant and was awarded $1.5 million for 3 years. This Department of Justice grant, coupled with the Justice Assistant Formula grant, allowed Palm Beach County to fund our program. The Justice Assistant grant is a state and local formula grant that Palm Beach County receives on an annual basis. Additionally, the Council of State Government provides technical assistance, which is critical to the success of our reentry program. Reentry is not a law enforcement function. It's a social service, and we treat it as such. Hence, the success of the program involves partnerships with criminal justice and community providers. The picture of the map to the right outlines Palm Beach County community providers geographically who offer critical services to our reentry population. This slide describes the 4 tracks through which services are provided, and I point out Restore, which is the most successful due to the pre-release component. All of our programs offer critical case management services based on risk and needs assessment of the individual participants. This slide here shows the structure of services, and of the Restore service, that includes the portal of entry, where individuals are released and then they are met by their case managers. This is where the transition from incarceration to community begins, and our felons are required to register for the county. Palm Beach County understands the importance of individualized assessments, such as the county utilizes the Level of Service Inventory Revised, which is the LSIR, as the assessment tool for our adult reentry population. However, on a side note, our juvenile program, we utilize the Residential Positive Achievement Change Tool, which is known as the RPAC, while the youth is in commitment, and the Community PAC after the youth has transitioned into community. Palm Beach County creates a shared database which allows our reentry partners and providers to communicate amongst one another. Renew plays an essential role in reentry programming. The database captures all information related to the participant and provides recidivism data, which is the program's measurable key outcome. Additionally, Renew serves as a valid tool for funding opportunities. You can go ahead. Okay. And then this slide is a snapshot of our Renew database. All users are provided access, which allows for the identified provider to enter and view participants' information as necessary. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Arlene Griffith.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Daniel. I'm Arlene Griffith, and thanks also to the organizers for this opportunity to participate. Palm Beach County's focus is to have a standardized program across the county, and as such has developed written policies and procedures that is used by our reentry partners as a guide for all county-funded reentry programs to ensure consistency. Next slide, please. An important part of any reentry program, as you would understand, is evaluating to ensure efficiency. Palm Beach County started the reentry initiative recognizing the need to address the rate at which men and or women were returning to incarceration. But we had very few answers on how to fix this. There were and still are many challenges, but our program is an open shop, as we often say, and has always welcomed feedback for improvement. To this end, the University of South Florida was invited to evaluate our program. In addition, the RTI International and Urban Institute evaluated, in particular, the Restore Initiative as a second chance grantee. And the University of Miami also evaluated the Back to a Future youth program that was funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. As an assurance as well, the county's Criminal Justice Commission Research and Planning Unit provides ongoing monitoring for the reentry programs. Next slide, please. This slide indicates the University of South Florida's findings, which is certainly encouraging for us, noting that the Restore initiative has led to significant improvements in county-funded reentry programs. The Renew also provides an integrated database system that is essential to the reentry's continued success, and importantly, that the county's approach to reentry can become a national model. Next slide, please. Daniel mentioned Restore as the county's most successful model. And this slide is a direct quote by the University of South Florida indicating the rearrest rates, which is less than 50% for participants in the Restore program when compared to non-participants. Next slide, please. This slide highlights just one of Palm Beach County's reentry provider, the Lord's Place, and the programs that are offered. There are three other providers that we use. One is Gulfstream Goodwill, the Riviera Beach Justice Service Center, and Choice to Change. And they pretty much provide the same services for all our participants, depending on their individual needs. And those could include bus passes. Housing, we know, is one of the main challenges and issues that they have that we try to address when they get out. Palm Beach County has also received national recognition and attention due to our unique collaboration. and was one of 7 sites in the country to participate in the national evaluation and one of 2 sites in the country to be selected as a pilot site for the IRIS employment project. Next slide, please. As you know, employment is an important part of success, and we know the challenges the reentry population faces upon release, including obtaining and maintaining employment. Next slide, please. So in 2013, the Department of Justice, through the Council of State Governments, released an IRIS white paper, which is the Integrated Reentry and Employment Pilot Strategies. The goal of this was to bridge workforce development and reentry fields by connecting people to appropriate services based on their individualized needs. As we know, one size does not fit all, especially for the reentry population. Next slide, please. So this shows the 2 pilot sites that were selected, Milwaukee and Palm Beach County. So we were selected from a pool of 25 applicants to become this pilot site, for which we are proud. And this is a 3-year project, and while no funding was directly involved, Palm Beach County has and continues to receive technical assistance from the Council of State Governments. So our first year was spent gathering and evaluating information provided from the reentry program and all our partners. As a result, the Council of State Governments provided valuable recommendations for implementations, and we are currently in the implementation stage, after which follows an evaluation. Next slide, please. Barbara mentioned employment as one of the greatest barriers for our population when they get out. And that is why one of our key focus for the last 3 years was to ban that box from that application that allows them, that ask if you have a felony. And we're not saying that you can't do a background check. What we've been asking is that individuals, employers, and municipalities ban this box so these individuals can get a chance or an opportunity to present themselves. Then a background check can be done. And so this picture here you see is a former commissioner of Palm Beach County, Commissioner Taylor, who was really very instrumental in starting this. So the city of West Palm Beach was the first one to ban the box. Then Palm Beach County, as a county itself, banned the box. And so about 7, I would say, jurisdictions have since banned, and we continue to present to other jurisdictions for them to follow suit. Next slide, please. So in every program, there are various issues, and we all experience them. However, we've always decided that this work is way too important to allow issues to become a barrier in successful programming. And so we try our very best to work through the issues, of course, with the input of all our stakeholders. Next slide, please. And Daniel again touched a little on the funding for the county's reentry program. But when it comes to sustainability, this slide shows Palm Beach County's funding stream for our reentry program. And as you see, we do get funding from the Department of Justice Edward Byrne Memorial Grant, the Department of Justice Second Chance, which was the major one that really got us off the ground, or JAG grant from the state of Florida. There are also the Law Enforcement Trust Funds, local ad valorem, as I said before, that our county commissioners really bought into our reentry program, and as such has invested some funding in that as well. As the MacArthur Foundation and Palm Beach County has in fact just received a huge grant from the MacArthur Foundation that will also help with our reentry efforts. Additionally, Palm Beach County, specifically for our reentry program, was just successful in obtaining a SMART reentry grant from the Department of Justice, and this will help us to provide on-the-job training and cognitive-based interventions for all our reentry participants. Next slide, please. So this shows the main ingredients for our program's success and sustainability. As mentioned before, buy-in from our stakeholders was key. Leadership, making decisions, also very, very important for the sustainability of our program, and certainly the willingness on the part of all stakeholders to collaborate. And that's one of the things that we really boast at the table. We boast in Palm Beach County, as we have all our stakeholders sitting at the table, all our criminal justice partners, communities, and nonprofit agencies. Next slide, please. Again, it's all about collaboration, as I said, which is key to our success. And Palm Beach County is recognized for the collaborative efforts among government and community. We've recognized that we couldn't do it with ourselves on our own, and so it takes the collaboration of the community and the various stakeholders to continue the success. Next slide, please. So this is a map that highlights the areas to which individuals are returning to the county from incarceration, hence the need for various providers geographically. The red here indicates the highest concentration of individuals that are returning. Next slide, please. And here is just some statistics from 2015 indicating the program's participation and cost savings. And as you can see, what are cost savings, the bottom line. So we have always said it's worth our effort. It's definitely a challenging job, but it's definitely worth the efforts that we put in. Next slide, please. And so in spite of our many successes, there are still many issues that we go through every day, some that are beyond us, some that are, because of collaboration, we have started getting a better hold of and seeing some results. But especially for those jurisdictions that are just starting their reentry program, there are going to be lots of challenges. And think about it, we do have so many challenges as an ordinary individual without a background, especially those, think about those with a background, and you can just imagine the many challenges they have. So I think this is my last slide, and Daniel and I are here for questions at the end of our presentation, and thanks for your time.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So that was quite an impressive description of that great programming going on in Florida. My name's Laura Tuggle. I'm the Executive Director at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. We are the largest nonprofit civil legal aid provider in the state of Louisiana. And I'm going to be talking today primarily about specifically the role of civil legal aid within a holistic reentry services framework. So much more specific kind of carve out than the description of the comprehensive program that you heard about a few moments ago. Next slide. So up until a few years ago, our organization had not really been involved in reentry programs at all. Some articles came out in our local newspaper in 2012 that reported that Louisiana was considered the world's prison capital and that it had the most incarcerated people per capita than any other place in the world. And within that, New Orleans was dubbed with the infamous title as the most incarcerated city in the most incarcerated state in the entire world. And so that really sort of got us thinking about what can we do better, what can we do differently within our community. For decades, our organization had a really hands-off policy about sort of the civil side of the justice system is siloed over here, and the criminal side is siloed on the other side, and we really weren't having that much interaction or any kind of collaboration to try to better serve people that may be involved in both systems, to help them have better outcomes and to ultimately help with some of those cost savings and long-term benefits to society that you heard about a few moments ago. And so in 2014, maybe the end of 2015, we had a state bar president who really encouraged our pro bono providers and our civil legal aid providers to look and see what could we do to try to formulate some programming to help remove legal barriers that stand in the way of returning citizens having more productive lives and better economic opportunities. And so that is kind of how we got started thinking about things, and it really took a change in some top-level leadership external to our organization, but also within our organization to get us thinking about things in a different way. I've got a couple of slides here. Can you go back to the other one? Can you go backwards a little bit? Thank you. So, you guys can kind of look at this. You can see that Louisiana had a pretty dramatic imprisonment rate over the last, it's really closer to 4 years now, according to that chart. As you can see, it went up and up and up. Next slide. Thank you. Although Louisiana has similar, if a little bit higher, crime rates to many other states that are kind of in the South and not too far from us. Next slide. But what we do is we put a lot more people in prison or jails for nonviolent offenses as compared to other states in the region that have similar crime rates to us. Next slide. And 86, at least the time this was done, 86% of our prison admissions had a nonviolent primary offense. So a lot of drug charges and a lot of nonviolent charges that were resulting in mass incarceration. So once we sort of really decided, what can we do? This is such a gigantic problem. We're really not sure where to start and how we can make a difference, because this is new for us, but, there seemed to be a willingness to try to help bring in a missing service to some of our local reentry courts. So that's kind of where we sort of landed on, was looking at how we could work with some reentry courts that we had within our geographic region, because they had case managers, they had other supports to kind of help us be more successful. And we also took a look at other players within the community, both nonprofits and courts, who have worked with the reentry population for a while. And when we started looking at that, we did things like went on websites that have lists of who's gotten federal reentry grants within our jurisdiction. And we were able to see some of the people that had gotten some of the Second Chance Act grants, or that maybe in the past had received some Department of Labor grants. And so we realized that we already had some relationships with other work that we do with a lot of those other nonprofits that were already involved. So it was places like the Goodwill and the Volunteers of America that we saw often on those lists as grantees for federal funding. So the other thing we did with the help of LAIR is trying to figure out which ones of different federal funding streams allow civil legal aid as an eligible service, or that there might be a good argument that it could be an eligible service. And so when grant notifications come out, especially anybody on the phone that, writes grants, there's usually a fairly quick turnaround time, and needs are so great that if someone's not already thinking about you as a partner, you need to be able to make a compelling case in a pretty short period of time, because all these grants have pretty short turnaround time, that you are a missing link, that civil legal aid is a vital service that maybe hasn't been thought about before as something that really is value added to a reentry proposal. And so we kind of started having just we wanted it to be a one-pager, but it ended up being a one-pager but on two sides. And it was just a real bare bones sort of a, hey, here's some of the things we think that we could do that would really be helpful in a proposal. And we were ready to sort of float those around on pretty short notice. Another thing to kind of think out if you're thinking about trying to get involved in this work, particularly if you're trying to use federal funding, is really sort of knowing what you can handle. Some of the federal grants, if not all of them, pretty much all of them can sometimes have pretty onerous reporting requirements, but there are also some federal grants that have match requirements where you may have to bring in either additional cash or in-kind match and have the capability to be able to track that. So you have to be able to know that you're going to be able to, do your part of the job to help have successful outcomes, especially if you're going in as a sub-grantee with another partner. They have to know that you're kind of set up to be able to produce the information that they need. You also have to be prepared, especially with new partnerships, if you're forging a new partnership, even if it's someone that you've worked with a while, to really kind of help grow that. You can't just think that, okay, great, we did all the work, we convinced you that this is a vital service, so we did the MOU, you got the money, we're all ready to go, and just kind of sit back and have the referrals just start coming. Sometimes you really have to work that angle. One thing that we really started pushing for in many of our grants, not just this kind of grant, is that every single program participant that is in a program ends up with a holistic civil legal needs screen, because if you just rely on the participant to identify their own legal needs, or a case manager who may not be a lawyer, they may not realize that a problem someone's having may in fact potentially have a legal solution. So that's something that we try to sort of negotiate, and also our capability that if sometimes, depending upon the grant source, you may want to try to generate for referrals that you can make if you have someone that's coming into your office that you identify could possibly be a good fit for someone else's grant. Next slide. So one of the first ones we got, which this grant was not wildly successful, it started getting better towards the end. Definite a lesson learned there was that we really had to work harder with this partner in getting them to recognize potential legal problems and pushing for those automatic screening procedures. So one of the first ones we got was a Department of Labor grant. It was called Face Forward. It worked with younger offenders, and there was a fairly wide range of civil legal services that could potentially be provided. And the list is there: helping secure a driver's license, helping expunge records, creating or modifying child support orders, helping parents obtain or retain custody, and also protective orders for domestic violence victims. Those were some of the specific things. An MOU had to be entered into detailing services, and it was a 3-year grant, but we really didn't start getting very many referrals until the end of the 3rd year. Next slide. Thank you. So that partnership led to SLLS our organization, getting included as a subgrantee in 2 other different organizations, Department of Labor grant that was called Training to Work. Civil legal aid was just a small subcomponent of those grants. We submitted were included as a potential subgrantee with both the Volunteers of America and Goodwill. Goodwill ended up getting funded for that particular grant. There was a very significant community planning stage, lots of community partners at the table. One thing that we had to be careful and really check out the Legal Services Corporation regulations, since they're our single largest funder. We had to make sure that people that were in the kind of program that Goodwill was working with, that they were not considered as incarcerated. There was one partner that was going to work with people like on a work release program, which can sometimes run afoul of the LSC regulations. And then there was some work that we were just doing potentially shortly before someone got released to identify legal needs and then work with them once they got released. So that's something that you kind of want to check out and find out exactly what kind of program the participants are in case you end up needing to use some LSC money to potentially help you out and making sure that you're not messing anything up on that end. The types of assistance that could be provided under this grant are virtually identical, if not identical, to the face forward that we saw on the previous slide. Next slide. Thank you. The Volunteers of America grant was not approved in that cycle, but we ended up, they reapplied for another Training to Work grant targeted to young fathers and mothers up to age 24. They applied for that earlier this year, and it was approved. And I haven't gotten all the particulars on it yet because we're working on rolling it out. It's just not getting ready to start. And I think we are in there for about $25,000 a year, which for us is close to half of a relatively newly licensed attorney. Next slide. Another program that we were fortunate to be able to apply for, there was a joint pilot project between the Department of Justice and the Department of Urban and Housing Development that Lair and our friends at NLADA helped, had some influence in creating, I believe. But it's called the Juvenile Reentry Assistance Program, or JRAP, and it provides civil legal aid to public housing youth up to age 24 who have a criminal or arrest record to try to improve future economic opportunities. And the housing authority, your local housing authority, had to be the grantee. But it was an interesting setup because the housing authority could only get a maximum of 7% of the grant. So it wasn't a huge grant. It was like a $100,000 grant for up to 18 months. But the housing authority could only get 7%, and civil legal aid provider had to get at least 93%. So that was a pretty good deal for us. There was a match requirement on this one. At least 25% of the $100,000 had to be matched. And another allowable activity in addition to civil legal aid was supportive services. Next slide. Okay. It was an 18-month grant. It recently was determined that if organizations, I think they ended up originally with 18 grantees, but I think they were able to increase it to maybe around 20 or so. Extensions were able to be requested in case, you had delays in starting up or anything like that. We have a collaborative project for our JRAP program with 5 partners that include the Housing Authority of New Orleans, us, a group called Providence, which is a nonprofit. They do a number of different services, but for this particular project, they provide case management and supportive services to public housing residents in one of our redeveloped public housing sites. Urban Strategies is also another partner in the grant. They provide supportive services and case management for public housing residents in 3 public housing sites. And then we also involve the Justice and Accountability Center, who does a lot of post-conviction work, a lot of expungement work, to help us design and implement public housing clean jacket days and expungement clinics. Our partners ended up providing almost all of the match through case management funding that they had. We brought in a little bit of in-kind match through some volunteers. And at first, when we applied for this funding source, we thought we had a really good partnership, a lot of energy. We didn't know if we were going to get funded. So at the same time we were applying for the federal funding, we had already written the grant, so we decided, hey, we know that a local foundation has an interest with Opportunity Youth up to age 24. How about if we ask them to help us fund the same kind of program services, but to people that are on the Section 8 voucher program as opposed to public housing, because initially this program was only for public housing residents, although that later got changed to include Section 8. So the good thing is that they both got approved, and we were able to roll out both projects at the same time. Next slide. In terms of sustainability and different ways to keep projects going, many foundations all across the country are very interested in funding reentry work. Typically, they want to fund it as part of a holistic project, not really that much interest from what we've seen of funding standalone civil legal aid type programs. So, and you really do need a holistic project. You're going to have folks from, as you heard from the previous speakers, about all the other kinds of supportive services that people need in order to be successful. A new example in our local area, our local United Way about a year ago started making what they call collaborative collective impact grants. And one of the things they funded was something called the Louisiana Prison ReEntry Alliance, which is a big group of different providers coming together, looking at what resources they may have and sort of how do we attack this mass incarceration problem in Louisiana through multiple partners' resources and sort of identifying the gaps. And so, there are many different foundations, both local and very large foundations that are interested in this kind of work. But you've really got to start trying to do some of it before you can probably end up being able to bring in some of those, especially some of those larger resources. As we've talked about before, reentry courts have a very strong interest and are pretty good at seeking federal grants. Most of them would be able to include civil legal aid as a line item if they realized its importance. Of course, you could write things on your own, but for many of these projects, you really want to be coming along as a subgrant partner instead of, trying to be the main applicant. State and local governments are also really strong potential partners on these kind of grants. Next slide. Oh, that may be the last one. And so I think we wanted to try to leave some time for questions. I think the only thing I would end with, most of the work that we're beginning to do in this area, and we still have a lot of room to grow, is focused at helping remove barriers primarily to employment. We are working in crafting a fellowship application. We don't know if it will be funded, but another really big need that we have in our area is for people that have mental health and or physical disabilities that really aren't great candidates due to some of the challenges they face with their medical issues, and they are going to need some help near the time they're getting released to try to reestablish and or obtain different kinds of benefits, whether it's disability or VA benefits, depending upon the individual situation. So we're looking at working with the Department of Corrections and trying to issue spot some of those folks and seeing if we can develop some programming with that special population. In our area, I think they estimate that it's around, it's either 13 or 15% of the entire prison population. I can't remember which one. So there are different ways to kind of look at that. Oh, thank you. Someone moved this slide, so I'll zip through this. One other way to try to bring some additional sustainability is through volunteer or pro bono resources. A lot of people, for many different reasons, are interested in trying to lend a hand when it comes to reentry issues. And so working with our State Bar Association and our Access to Justice Commission over the last couple of years, we and with other nonprofit partners, we developed some pro bono training resources, did a lot of legwork before we could kind of pull everything together. We did some assessments of people in our local reentry courts. We felt like that was a manageable population, got a handle on the most common needs, and then designed some training around it. In the New Orleans area, we did a training last December. Almost 100 volunteers showed up. We did that in partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And last June, a couple of months ago, we did a training on the North Shore in our area, which we had about 50 pro bono lawyers. We run an in-house pro bono program there. And so that was a very good outcome for us. And just this week, we had a meeting with the Reentry Court in Baton Rouge to see if we might be able to start a pilot there and move forward with a small program, hopefully in the fall or maybe early next year. And one thing that we may be looking at, we recently applied for and were awarded a Pro Bono Innovation Fund grant. And while it primarily is looking at how we strengthen and transform our pro bono efforts and better support our volunteers throughout our program, we're going to take what we learned from that and try to apply it to at least one or two pilot projects. And we're definitely considering reentry as one of those projects. I think that's all I have. Yes. Thank you.
And thank you again so much to all of our speakers, to Arlene, Barbara, Danielle, and Laura. As we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we'll be posting the slides to our website tomorrow, and then we'll be posting a video recording of this webinar within the next few weeks. Before we close out fully, we do have a few questions from our participants, so we'll move through those to our speakers, particularly to Danielle or Arlene. Emily asks, how is the accurate recidivism data that you referenced gathered?
This is Arlene. All our information, our data is captured in our database system Renew that we mentioned, which is our shared database, and all our case managers have access, and so the information is shared among everyone.
So I'm just going to, this is Danielle. So what happens when an individual is arrested, our Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office indicates into our Renew system the new arrest, and we are notified at 7:30 a.m. every morning of any arrests that had occurred the prior day.
Great, thank you. And Rebecca asks, and this is for any of our speakers, if anyone has any suggestions or advice on where to start in seeking mental health support funding for reentry families and individuals unrelated to substance abuse.
Okay, this is Danielle again. So I'd like to say there's a lot of grant opportunities out there for, of course, you said unrelated to substance abuse, but that are mental health and or co-occurring. We have a very special partnership with our mental health providers in Palm Beach County. They look at reentry as a priority population. We also have a database that is put out by Department of Children and Family that also identifies individuals coming back to Palm Beach County throughout the state of Florida. So we have a unique collaboration with our mental health providers in Palm Beach County.
Great, thank you. And Sarah asks if anyone has suggestions for transportation assistance in rural areas that lack a mass transit system related to reentry needs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. But what I do, and this is Arlene, I do know that some of our providers, or I think maybe all our providers, do have transportations. They typically have either a van, or if the case managers may even transport their clients themselves in their private vehicles.
Great, and Patrick, one of our participants, has chimed in asking if there's been any luck leveraging SNAP employment and training funds for transportation, work clothes, or other resources. Panelists, any luck leveraging those SNAP funds?
Sure. Actually, this is Arlene again, Palm Beach County, and we do have a great relationship with Career Source. That is our provider here, local provider in Palm Beach County that handles SNAP, or that administers the SNAP program. And so all our reentry case managers are paired with their case managers as well. And so they sometimes, in fact, share the same client. So they have been providing some assistance in that regard.
Thank you, Arlene.
Welcome.
And Nora asks if anyone has had success working with registered sex offenders on issues related to housing and employment stability.
Well, we can definitely address, Circuit 15 can definitely address. We actually, like I mentioned earlier, we have a subcommittee that is just strictly related to any challenges or barriers that the sex offenders occur on a daily basis. We are very fortunate to work with Matthew Ministries, which is one of the providers that they provide housing as well as any resources or additional services that go along with the housing component. I believe they currently house 80 individuals in Palm Beach County. But yes, there certainly is many barriers, especially with residency restriction within specific jurisdictions. It is one of the areas that we do we challenge, well, we are challenged on a daily basis when it comes to this population.
And this is Arlene, just to add to that as well. Matthew 25 Ministries not only houses Palm Beach County residents, but individuals from all over. So that creates even a greater challenge for our population here.
This is Barbara in the 19th Circuit, and we also have in St. Lucie County 3 different halfway houses that provide services for sex offenders, and they're specifically in the community, networking, finding jobs for the sex offender. That's their sole mission.
Wonderful. Thank you, panelists. And we have time for just 2 more questions. But please do keep in mind that our speakers today have offered to be points of contact should any of our participants have additional questions that we don't have time to review during the webinar. So a particular question for Laura. We have a participant who asks, have you had any difficulty finding clients who meet all of the JRAP requirements? That this is an ongoing challenge in her area. And additionally, do you have any information about the likelihood of program continuance in future years?
Well, yes, we have had that problem of clients that are eligible. We are doing a couple of different activities. We've had Zippo problems meeting the numbers of folks to attend the expungements clinics and our Know Your Rights sessions, but we'd also proposed individual cases for different kinds of collateral consequences issues, and that has been very challenging. Either they're too old or, they don't have the right housing status, or the type of charge is too serious for us to be able to do with those kind of with these kind of funds. So one thing that really is helping us expand our numbers is the move to open up the eligibility pool to people that don't live in public housing but that have vouchers. So we're just now starting to, even though we're, over a year in, we're just now starting to really pick up the numbers on that. I have not heard anything about a possible continuation. So that's one reason why we're starting to look at whether we can continue foundation interest with that particular project, because we feel like it's beginning to pick up steam. So we'll see. We're trying one new thing to try to reach more of the impacted population. So we have about 18,000 voucher holders, families on the voucher program in New Orleans. So the Housing Authority agreed a couple of weeks ago that it would insert in its annual recertification letters that it mails out once a year to require people to come in and update their circumstances. They agreed to insert a JRAP flyer into each and every mailing. So, we're a little concerned what the response might be, but we figured since we do have at least a brief extension on the grant, and we also have a foundation grant that has a little bit longer fuse, that we would go ahead and do that, even though it's going to go out over time to 18,000 people.
Thank you, Laura. And our last question during the live webinar today is from Eric, who asks if anyone has experience developing a reentry program with a local corrections facility, and in particular, if anyone has sort of sample MOUs or sample documents that they found helpful in developing that partnership.
Sure. This is Arlene Griffiths, and we absolutely do. In fact, when we started our reentry program, it was in collaboration with our Department of Corrections, and there was a youth prison that initially was sitting unused, and so we approached, and our public defender, in fact, was very instrumental in doing this, approached our Secretary of State then about a collaboration and signing an MOU, and so they have allowed us to open that prison. It's called the Sago Palm Reentry Center. That's here in Palm Beach County. So what it allows us to do is men only that are within 18 to 36 months of completion of their sentences, those that were convicted and are returning to Palm Beach County, what we do is bring them here to that prison in Palm Beach County to allow for pre-release services, and as well as a seamless transition where our local providers are able to go in 6 months before they're released, and start that relationship. And that actually is our most successful track.
This is Barbara with the 19th Circuit. we don't have it with the prison system, but we have the reentry program within our jail system. So each one of our 4 counties, our county jail, has a reentry component along with the services, like I was stating earlier, with drug rehabilitation, spiritual dorm, GED dorm, and culinary dorm for training purposes, and then the reentry services, so that transition from jail to being released, that transition can happen. And also with them being incarcerated in the jail, if they are going to DOC, they're given specific instructions to get a hold of the reentry specialist in the county they're coming back to about 6 months before they're going to leave DOC, where that transition can be made. They can be placed in a halfway house. A safe person can pick them up from the bus station. You know, things can be implemented so that transition from DOC back into society can be very smooth as well.
Wonderful. And thank you again to our presenters, and thank you to our supporters. This series, which has been developed as a part of the Civil Legal Aid Initiative, is generously supported by the Kresge Foundation and the Public Welfare Foundation. It's also supported by a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant to NLADA's Defender Legal Services Department. As you're all still on the line for this webinar, I would invite you to save the date for 2 upcoming webinar opportunities. We're excited to announce the rescheduled Case Studies in Defender and Civil Program Partnerships, which will take place on October 31st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and the final Partnerships That Work series webinar for 2017, focusing on case studies in community economic redevelopment programs, which will take place on November 9th, also at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can register for either or both of those opportunities on NLADA's website. And again, keep an eye out for the slides of this webinar, which we'll post tomorrow, and the video, which will be coming in the next few weeks.